Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Business Value and Demo Vignettes Prepared for Detours with Eric Burns. My name is Jacob Begay, and I'm the Senior SDR Manager here at Consensus, and I will be the moderator for today's session. DemoFest is presented by Consensus. Consensus is intelligent demo automation software that helps scale pre-sales with interactive video demos. You can learn more at goconsensus.com or view the automated micro demo at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. Consensus is proud to provide this event for free to all attendees. However, we would like to invite each of you to donate to our company's humanitarian organizations if you'd like to. You can learn more about this and donate by visiting the DemoFest Gives Back booth in our virtual expo hall in the Booths tab or at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. We invite you to join us in our DemoFest community on Discord. Our community is where you can connect with speakers, get exclusive access to content and events, and where the conversation will continue long after the DemoFest event is ended. And we encourage all attendees to join us and so many others. You can join the community at the link in the Docs tab. We encourage you to participate in today's session. On the right side of your console, you can see a few ways to engage with us throughout the session. The chat function will allow you to engage with us as well as other attendees. Throughout the session, you may see a few polls. We encourage you to participate as your feedback is important to us. And our speaker will be taking questions from the audience at the end of the session. But we encourage you to ask questions at any time through the Q&A box. If at any time you're having technical difficulties, you can go ahead and head down to the gear on the bottom of your screen. And here you'll see a help document, and it'll help troubleshoot some of the most common issues. And now I would like to introduce our speaker. Eric Burns has researched the key value propositions and created demo flows for multiple firms over the past 12 plus years. As a continuous learner and creative problem solver with years of experience, he brings real insight to tech. His education includes a bachelor's in business, a master's in MIS, and many MOOC courses. And with that, I'll turn the rest of the time over to you, Eric.
Great. Hey, thank you, Jacob. As Jacob mentioned, I'm Eric Burns. I've been playing in technology for a long time now. You can see the gray hair and the missing hair, etc. I'll go ahead and pull things up here. I'm currently the VP of Sales Operations for North America for a firm named Geniusy. Quick plug there. If you have any development that you need to outsource, that you need high quality and you want metrics driven, reach out and let's chat and see if we're a good fit to help solve what you'd like to do. I also do consulting and contracting work with Interhouse solutions, and that's both around the sales engineering space, some virtual events with Raspberry Pis that get a lot of attendance and are very effective, as well as solving other technology problems, etc. Today, we're going to talk about being able to articulate the actual business value that come from the features that your solution offers, and how to structure your demos so that you can show little pieces and quickly pivot in such a way that you can convey the correct information, the best information to the stakeholders in ways that they understand, that get them excited, that get them leaning forward. So a little bit about me before we get started. I love technology. Especially information technology. It's just really exciting, the things that you can do with all the different systems that we have out there, all of the different Lego blocks in a way that you can tie together and build really exciting things. But I did actually get started in sales. I spent 5 years doing pure commission sales. I was successful. I have a lot of respect for the folks that do that for a living. It's a lifestyle. It's quite an experience. During that time, I earned the bachelor's in business. I spent time as a system administrator, did some developing, some system architecture. And as I was wrapping up that master's in management information systems, I somehow fell into being a sales engineer. I didn't even know that the career existed. And basically, I was paid to play for a very long time across multiple industries. I'm sure a lot of you that are watching this know what that's like, where you're able to learn evolving technology, learning things that are constantly changing, coming into all sorts of different companies and seeing how they've put those Lego blocks together, what problems they're having, and seeing if you can help them, and if so, how. And also, as I mentioned earlier, I'm the VP of Sales Operations for North America for Vignettes. Again, that's the development outsourcing. Reach out to me if you have any needs there. Also, the contracting and consultant work related to sales engineering, conversational AI, and those Raspberry Pi virtual events. My perspective here, again, is that business degree. I've got some MIS skills. I've gotten to work with the whole gamut of levels throughout an opportunity. The individual contributors, directors, all the way up to the CXO level. Also worked where verticals were relevant. For a lot of us out there, our companies end up being broken up into different verticals so that you're using the terminology that's relevant. So you'll have an e-commerce vertical that knows the statistics and the ways of talking about e-commerce versus fintech versus ed tech, just as an example there. Also got to experience that you're typically supporting multiple account executives, and they tend to frequently change, unfortunately. It's the nature of the business that they rotate in and out. Sometimes it's that they're not successful. They weren't set up for success. Sometimes it's that they were very successful. They blow out their number. And what does the company do? The company increases their quota and reduces their named account list. And they're like, hey, I'm out of here. I was successful and you've set me up to fail, et cetera. But I'm off on a tangent there. But we've all experienced or will experience it, typically multiple account executives that frequently change. My experience has been across 3 different industries. The first was application performance management. That was where I found out about sales engineering. I hired on at CompuWare. A couple months in, they acquired a company called Dynatrace. And if you're not familiar, the application performance management helps you understand what's going on with your web-based application, what systems it's flowing through, where the bottlenecks are. After that, I found out about Fastly, which is a content delivery network. Was there a couple different times, with another 4.5 years or so. And I'll give some details to what a CDN does later on as part of one of the examples. Then the conversational AI, there was some time with Icera, and then Cognigy, which really has some cool stuff. If you're looking to implement conversational AI, they've got a free trial, they've got free training. It's something to definitely look at. A couple of disclaimers here. I don't work for any of those companies. I do own Fastly stock, but I have to say, even if I didn't, I'd be a Fastly fanboy. It's got some real neat stuff there. And it's going to be part of some of the examples that I'm going to give to try and give context to the vocabulary as well as the examples for what we're talking about here. All these views and opinions are my own, not of my prior employers, not necessarily those of Consensus, etc. And with anything, trust but verify. Just because it's showing up on my page, verify things. I am going to go ahead and start with what I'm going to call a bird walk. One of my professors used to use this term where we're going to kind of meander, but we're eventually going to get to where our destination is. We're going to talk about the terminology that we use here and how we convey business value. I got this real cool drill bit I want to sell you. This has a reduced shank on it. It's got a brad point. Really, there's some really great features to this drill bit. Is that what the customer wants? No. Customer's not interested in that brad point or that reduced shank. What do they want, folks? They're ultimately looking for a 1/2-inch hole. Now, it's true that the drill press operator likes the reduced shank because he can use this drill bit in more equipment. And the procurement team, well, they like that brad point because they can purchase softer material and the drill bit won't wander. So different stakeholders like those features, but by using this terminology, you're not necessarily conveying the value for them. So an example that I experienced in the workplace was at Fastly, And I realized not everybody watching this video understands what a content delivery network is. So I want to give a real quick kind of elevator pitch, I guess, to explain what it is that a content delivery network does. If you have your website on servers, let's say in San Francisco or San Jose, and you have visitors coming in from Japan or London, etc., that traffic has to go halfway around the world and back. And it creates delays, and it creates more risk that it won't work. And a content delivery network stages that content all over the world at these high-speed connection points so that the site's faster. And there are all these studies to show how that means more revenue because people look longer, they put more items in their shopping cart, etc. It also makes it more stable because if something happens in your data center, there are copies all over the world, and it's more likely that your viewers aren't going to see that. And we joke around that also lets you break the speed of light because it's closer content. So one of the items that I saw when I was in Salesforce was that there was a BDR that would send out messages saying, we've got 150 millisecond cache invalidation. And he'd use this message to all sorts of different stakeholders at the target company. And even people that know what a CDN is are going, what on earth? 150 millisecond cache invalidation. It's just more spam. It just gets ignored, doesn't go anywhere. Let's take a look at a real customer here. Hotel Tonight. Was it the 150 millisecond cache invalidation? That term, that probably wasn't what got them interested. No, not at all. They wanted to reduce their peak server load. And the way that the account executive could have positioned it was, with this feature, we can cache things that the other CDNs can't. We are so fast that you can cache those API requests, those web requests that are computationally intensive, and you can reduce the load on your servers. And what did Hotels Tonight experience? This is a wild number here, folks. 80% reduction. Now, Fastly didn't go in saying that they could do that high, but you can imagine for the folks, the VP of operations at Hotels Tonight, that's a lot of servers that you no longer have to cool, power, maintain, pay for the space that they're in. The business value was that not only did they get the resiliency, the speed, et cetera, it was the reduction in the servers that they had to be paying for to, again, power, cool, update, et cetera. Now, the Guardian, 150 millisecond cache invalidation. No, that really, those terms were likely what did not get them interested. They were looking to have a faster site, but they didn't want to have a delay in delivering the latest news and updating the latest news. And it's interesting because if you go on and you look at the use case, there's a quote from a software architect, excuse me, where he points out that they couldn't get another group of stakeholders on board unless they could make them comfortable that, hey, this isn't going to get in the way of you updating the site. Because with other CDNs at the time, it could take hours. You would make a change, and then all those thousands of computers, millions of computers around the world would have to update. So you didn't put it on the CDN because you couldn't. Well, here, one team realized that, hey, to get the other team on board, we need to show that this can be done. Because when you look at a news site, there are no switching costs. If someone mentions a certain thing happened and I pull up the Guardian and the article's not there, it's not on the front page, it's big news, I'm a few clicks away from going to some other site and getting that information. Now, as I've been painting this picture here, I've been using a couple pieces of vocabulary, and I think that it's very important that we highlight them and differentiate them. Because if you're going to try and get traction with some of these concepts internally inside of your company, you're going to want to be sure that different team members understand that there's a difference between these three terms. So the first one that I mentioned was a feature. And a feature is an item like that instant purge, that 150 millisecond cache invalidation. That's that quick name that you and marketing gives to something that you can do. and might also be that brad point or that reduced shank I mentioned earlier. That in turn is going to lead to a use case. And earlier, the example was Hotel Tonight writing about that 80% reduction in peak server load. Now, a couple things that I want to point out about use cases here. One is that there's a consensus page where they refer to a use case, and I would have used the word feature if you were using the terminology I use here. But also, use cases are a wonderful point when you're doing a demo where you can name drop, mention a relevant statistic, and get a little bit extra credibility. So rather than showing up that the race car slide with all the logos, as part of the demo, when you get to the point where you talk about a certain feature, you can mention the names of the large companies that are leveraging you because of that. And of course, the feature gives you the use cases, but it all comes down to that business value. What is it that matters? Why they want to look at your solution? And the example I gave earlier could be the lower data center cost, the faster performance, the increased revenue, or it could be as simple as that half-inch hole. What is it that they're looking for and how you're able to help them? Now, one of the things that I saw through my career, through the years, was that the demos go through kind of an evolution. And it's also interesting, as Jacob and I were chatting before this started, some companies are still kind of stuck back doing things this way. But the initial step that a lot of companies do as far as providing demos, they start off giving what's called a harbor tour. And what a harbor tour is, it's when I'll pull up the GUI or the application, and I just start at the first menu item and I walk down them. So first I'll tell you about domains and what they are and how you configure them. And then we talk about origins. And then we talk about settings. And you might not know what TLS is or Apex, whatever, but I'm still going to walk you through all of them. And what this gets its name from is, if you can imagine, I've lured you onto a boat to go on a tour of the harbor, and you're now captive. You're not going to jump off and swim to shore, especially, hey, in the New York harbor, no way. But as we slowly cruise out of the harbor, I'm going to point out each building and each warehouse and each ship that we go by, and I'm going to tell you about it. And you're just going to have to sit there as I walk through these different items. There's the harbor tour, folks. It doesn't help you. It turns people off. It's why it's hard to get folks on demos. This is the old way of doing things. This then tends to evolve into kind of a Me Too demo. Oh yeah, you can invalidate content. Oh yeah, you can do logging. Oh yeah, you can do, these are things, all the same terminology that your competitors are likely using. Another one of those items where you're going to see that a lot of the people in the meeting aren't participating. They aren't interested. It's not catching their attention. But then the next step in the evolution is when you start talking about the differentiators and you position them as a day in the life. So when we talk about a certain feature, we're going to bring up a certain piece of business value that matters to who's listening to what we're talking about. And I'm going to give some examples there when I go into some of the things that I experienced and some of the things that we put together. It all really comes down to why your firm, what provides business value. Now, if you're working at a company where this isn't being articulated internally, and I've experienced this. I was at a company where the first month I asked 10 different people in different roles, why this company? Why us versus our competitors? I got different answers. And there was no continuity there. There was no structure to what those values were. and how to convey that information. So if you're somewhere where this isn't being articulated, what helped me was what makes the stakeholders lean in. And I got to see this where there would be certain things where all of a sudden you start getting questions, or all of a sudden people are leaning in and wanting to know more. That is what's going to be the indicator for you if you're not able to suss it out on your own from your industry knowledge, what you're reading on the websites of your competitors, etc. So when we talk about that generic company, why Acme? What difference does it make? Because the reality is all of your stakeholders have different pain points. They're sitting there listening to your demo going, why do I care? What matters for them? So, hey, let's talk about Acme. In fact, let's have some fun there. Wile E. Coyote, bird-brained. You can dismiss that as not very bright, or dismiss that as he wants to get himself a Roadrunner. He needs lots of help. Well, hey, out in the desert, there are no stores. So catalog ordering, that's your only choice. That's the only way you're going to get the tools that you need to do this work. Acme makes everything that a Coyote could need. And they've got fast delivery. Hey, this is perfect. It all makes up for its junk. It doesn't work. It backfires, but it's his only option. So that's the value to Wile E. Coyote to deal with Acme. It's his only option, fast delivery, all sorts of neat stuff. So a real world example that I experienced was why Fastly. And what I got to see very quickly was that the quality sales engineers and the successful account executives frequently, consistently said it's all about visibility and control. Visibility and control. And for both of those topics, they had features, use cases, and business value that they could convey for whatever vertical they were working in and whatever stakeholder they were speaking to. And I'll give some examples of that when we get into a sample mock-up demo. Some key points here for this bird walk that we've been on so far is that we know that features don't sell. 150 millisecond cache invalidation, WTF. Reduced shank, whatever. Yet, we sales engineers are often stuck doing Harbor tours or the Me Too tours. And these do evolve over time. But one of the problems there is that they're often single-threaded and they're not always relevant. And when I talk about the single-threaded, what I'm referring to is the fact that you get into this flow and you're having to walk your opportunity from point A to point B and map out the different steps. And if you don't do it in order, you forget things. And what you'll happen is somebody will ask a question. They'll say, oh, but how about ABC? Oh, good question. I forgot to explain that. Oh, I went too fast and I didn't cover. And you're stuck where you have to follow this flow to be effective because you want to make sure you're setting the stage, you're laying down the breadcrumbs to get them from the start to the finish and see the big picture. The reality is that stories are what sells, especially day in the life, where you can go in and tell something that evocative piece that they can see this applying to them and being relevant to them. And of course, that the relevant metrics sell. Having those to drop them at the key point for that credibility. Now, one other tangent that I do want to go off on real quick. Several of the companies that I work for were doing things that were, at the time, and even now, are unique. Other competitors can't do what these companies do. And I like this quote from Arthur C. Clarke, where he said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And kind of one of the problems with magic is that you've got to show it. You're not going to tell it. You actually have to show it happening. And this show don't tell actually came up later at Fastly, but I want to give an early example where I didn't realize that I was doing this. But as I was thinking about the content for this presentation, it was like, oh gosh, when I was at Dynatrace, they have this really cool, it's a demo environment, learning environment. It's called Easy Travel. You can set it up on your local machine. You can run it in containers, all sorts of stuff. But what's really cool about it is that it has several dozen problem patterns. And those are things that you can break inside of this mock travel site. And this is fully functional. It's got a database, it's got a front end, it's got a back end, it's got all sorts of pieces. But I could be sitting there with a little USB monitor on the side to pull up this control panel, and I could create problems based on the stakeholders that I was speaking with. So it might be the developer, and I could go in and show different languages and different technologies. It might be the database person. Heck, it could even be the VP of marketing, and I can pull up a dashboard and show that person, oh, hey, look, real time, you can see how effective your marketing is by the sales that are flowing through the system without even having to change your website. This was like magic. This was really cool stuff. So we would show up at a customer and set things up or do a demo and create this transaction flow and show for a single request exactly which computer it flowed through, which was just, you don't have the source code. How could you do this? This was amazing stuff. To get an 18% performance gain with one code fix. Those are the types of things that you could do where you had to show how you really could get this transaction flow and see all the database queries and see the exceptions and logging related to that one user. When they called with a support problem, you could look and say, yes, I see what happened and we're going to have this fixed for you. As well as, those business metric dashboards that, how can you real time show me how effective my marketing is? And again, this is just an example, but it was the power of what you could do with the tool. This stuff was very cool, but it was a blend of people didn't believe you really could do all of this stuff. And also these industries become muddy where the competitors using very similar terminology and their semantics to the claims that they're making. Another example was, when I was at Fastly, the first time early on, there was that instant purge, which was that 150 millisecond cache invalidation. There was the real-time config deploys, real-time logging that you could add conditions to, so I could send different events to different teams. Really was some neat, powerful stuff, as well as image optimization, which was one of the features that they built in. Again, these were all very cool, but people almost didn't believe it, didn't get it. And so what happened was, at our 2017 sales kickoff, I was one of 4 sales engineers where we each created one demo for one of those 4 features. And I think mine might have been logging at the time. But the problem was they were all disparate. And I'm saying disparate, not desperate. Now, desperate, that's the account executive you're working with that's gone 6 months, hasn't closed a deal, their quotas, they're hurt, and you hear the desperation. No, it's not. Disparate, where they're separate. They didn't flow well. So if I was going to show you that real-time purge, I pull up a news site. And then when I show you the real-time logging, I pull up an e-commerce site. And for the viewer, there's this context switching. They don't get the path. They're having to, now we're looking at, and they're not able to stay with you as well, because you kind of have to be, I don't want to say spoon feeding, but you're trying to walk them down that path. And this is really where I experienced this whole concept of breaking these up into vignettes. And I'm going to cover some of the details of what makes them different as we move forward here. I do want to mention one thing, and I'm curious, when I said show, don't tell, I'm curious if any of you were familiar with tell, show, tell, and kind of went, wait a minute, what about if you did, throw something in the chat or reach out to me. I do want to just quickly mention 2N Global, the tell, show, tell methodology, I think is very effective for your live demos. The other reason I'm bringing it up here, I try to use it with my live demos. The times that I've recorded videos for consensus, I didn't leverage this. And so one of the areas that I'm curious is, if you're doing the consensus piece of things, you're trying to fit things in a certain amount of time, are you leveraging the tell, show, tell? Is it effective? Did you not leverage it? Again, I'm curious to hear, reach out to me, direct message, whatever. I'd like to know people's thoughts about, is this something to use when you're pivoting into consensus and leveraging this concept for your demo automation? So, hey, we're a half hour into this. Let's get into what we're here to talk about, vignettes. And I'm going to take that cheap cop out. I'm going to start off with Webster. So Webster will tell you vignettes, noun, plural, vignettes. It's a brief, evocative description. And by evocative, we're talking about bringing up strong images, memories, strong feelings. You want something that's going to strike a nerve. It's going to resonate with who you're speaking with. Another piece of the definition in Webster's is that it fades without a definite border. And that's another piece that's a component here when we talk about these vignettes. So it's about striking a balance, because the harbor tours evolve into those long stories that are single threaded. And you're locked into it because, as I mentioned earlier, you have to be sure you're setting the stage. You're pointing out the different breadcrumbs that get them from point A to point B. But if you break out these small little individual ones, like I mentioned earlier, my first experience at Fastly, it's kind of jarring where here, let me show you this. And you pull up a whole nother demo environment, as well as having the foundation to point out the key pieces of information along the way so that the listener understands. Because remember, as sales engineers, you explain this dozens of times, hundreds of times, possibly thousands of times, and you kind of forget that some of this is obvious to you, or some of this, I didn't say that. You've done it so many times, you forget. By breaking these up into these freestanding items, you're able to make sure that you're including all of those pieces to help the person that's listening, the stakeholder, get from point A to point B. So what I want to do now is I want to switch into a demo environment that I built, where what I decided to do was I took a single potential vertical, here it's e-commerce, and I took a look at those value props and said, okay, on this website, how can I show each of them independently? Where, for the ones at the sales kickoff, when you showed that real-time config deploy, you just pulled up a broken website. Well, I don't want to start with a broken website. I want to start with, hey, e-commerce company, here's an e-commerce site that you can identify with. I'm not going to use that exact wording, but you get how you're setting the stage where they look at this, they see themselves using the solution. And, it might be that we're talking about performance. So I'll pull up some film strips and I'll show how with image optimization, it's so much faster. And there would be the screenshots of it loading faster because you have image optimization. Or I might come in and it may be that I want to talk about that instant purging, that real-time cache invalidation. Well, they don't want to cache the pages that have their prices on it because, well, shoot, what if we make a mistake and we put the decimal point in the wrong place? And now we're selling iPhones for $11 a piece. And it's going to take me 4 hours to remove that from the CDN globally with our competitor. And I can show just this piece if I need. Or we could come in and, what if we're talking to the team that does the monitoring of the site, and I want to show them, hey, the new site deploys at 5 a.m. and somebody forgot a cascading style sheet. and the page is broken. And oh, hey, let me show you how you can fix this. You don't need to wake up the developers. You don't have to call them at 5 in the morning. You're going to leverage the conditional logging to see that this happened. And then you're going to use the real-time config deploys to fix it. Oh, and hey, when they click on the shopping cart and the site's broken, well, now you've got the logging to see that that happened, but you also have the ability to, with the edge logic, deploy a synthetic site maintenance page to buy you a little time and save face when somebody comes here. They at least see the logo and, hey, come back soon type of thing. Or basically, I'm looking at this e-commerce site, and then you can pivot this into other verticals. So the bonuses that you're getting with these vignettes is that your sales engineers are going to see for other value props how they're being positioned in other verticals, and it's going to help them realize that, okay, here's what Burns did over for e-commerce, and I'm in fintech, but here are the things that I can do with a fintech style deployment. Oh, hey, I'm using user-generated content. Here's how I can demo that item. And also, when they're documented, it makes it easier to expand to different stakeholders, and as I mentioned earlier, those different verticals. It's also, this is another plus, it's really nice when you start using consensus, because you've already built out that framework where you now have these little vignettes that you can use for those videos, and you've built this collection of documentation where, as you expand into other verticals or other sales engineers get involved, they can look at, here are the ways that this feature has been shown across these 3 other verticals, and it's easier for them to see how they can work it into, the demo that they're giving for the vertical that they're in. A couple of points that are real important to stress here. Your vignettes have to be structured so that they don't have to be in order, and they don't depend on each other. So prior to a call, you'll sync with your account executive, and you'll both agree, hey, based on the discovery, we want to show real-time config and instant purge. But then if in the middle of the conversation they start talking about page speed, I can really quickly pull up image optimization and how it makes the site faster. Or if they happen to bring up, oh, well, you know what, we can't have our site be visible in these countries, Libya, North Korea, etc. Oh, geofencing. Yeah, we can do that. Let me show you real quick. I have a vignette for that. Obviously, you're not using the word vignette with the customer, but you're prepared for it. It's also really good if they're somehow related, if you can work them into the same story. And it is critical that they be kind of the same site, the same application, because you don't want your potential customers, the opportunities folks, to have to do that context switching where they're going from the news site to the e-commerce site to the ed tech site to the broken site. It's one site or one area that they can identify with, and they can see how it's relevant to them. I do want to throw out a couple of quick points, and this is just me getting up on a soapbox. If you're working someplace where you have to test the demo every time before you give it, and frequently, more than a scary percentage, it's broken, you folks need to fix that, or believe me, find another place to work, because this is not an environment that you're going to be successful in. Also, it's really not a good thing when companies have to share a demo environment. You're not going to scale. And actually, now I'm realizing this is another item that points to consensus, because you are going to be able to automate a lot of those introductory demos. You're not going to have to worry about that shared environment. One last point that I want to give here is that it's really important that everybody be using the same metrics and the same verbiage. One of the things that I saw at Fastly here and there was, they had documented and tested that it was 150 milliseconds. But when you have account executives saying a few hundred milliseconds or 200 milliseconds or under 300, it sounds like I licked my finger and held it up to see which way the wind's blowing. It sounds like marketing. So make sure that everybody is using the same terms, the same statistics, the same verbiage. It's going to stick in the minds of the viewers more because they're going to hear the exact same number 3 times rather than hearing these different numbers. So at this point, that's basically what I had that I wanted to cover. And I wanted to open things up to see if anybody had any questions or comments here.
Perfect. So I did have one question, Eric. How do you go if your company isn't currently doing like demo vignettes is not part of the current process? How do you go about introducing that to an org where that's kind of a new way to go about demoing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's where I think it's interesting is that a lot I didn't always realize that everybody has different problems, different things that they're dealing with. And this actually came from Jocko Willink, if anybody's familiar with his advice and whatnot. It's hard to point and say, hey, here's a problem. We need to fix this. We need to fix this. Because everybody's dealing with other problems. If you instead start to build this yourself, and then the way I come at it is, I view the account executive as being in charge. They're the one with the quota. Their job depends on being successful at sales. A larger percentage of their income depends on that. I would put this together and then approach them and say, hey, this is the demo I had in mind. And I might not even tell them I'm doing the vignette part. I just say, oh, hey, listen, when we meet with company Y, here's what I want to show them. And then you show them those couple of pieces. And then you happen to be prepared. Thank you, Craig. Appreciate you putting the link in there for Jocko. But then you're prepared so that you've met with them and you've said, oh, hey, these are the 2 things I want to show them. But you also have these other items up your sleeve. And then you're on the call and you show those 2 items. And then the CIO says, oh, but we can't have our site be loaded in North Korea, China, etc. Oh yeah, geofencing. Here, let me show you that. And I show it to the CIO and then, okay, great. We don't have to worry about that. Now the account executive is going, oh, hey, wait, this is cool. Burns had these things up his sleeve, and you'll kind of get traction. And then when other people see the problem, instead of having spent a couple months saying we have a problem, we need to fix this, and crying wolf and being ignored, you can say, I've got an idea and let me show it to you. Or that account executive is going to say, oh, yeah, hey, you ought to see how Burns is handling this. So that's how I would come at it is if it's a larger company, you kind of have to put the pieces together, get the okay of your account executives to use it. If you're fortunate enough to be in early where you're the only sales engineer, there's only a couple, you can implement it. But that's how I would say to come at it, Jacob.
Okay. Kind of a follow-up to that. If a company has these demo vignettes, I know everybody can demo in kind of a different style. Do you recommend kind of making your own demo vignettes of what's out there, or just using kind of what's provided?
And that's another one kind of like where it depends. If you have the coverage for the vertical that you're speaking with and the stakeholders that you're speaking with, why reinvent the wheel? But there's a lot of value in having whatever you're showing be something where the viewer can see themselves using it, this being their data, their site. I mean, one of the examples when we would demo the conversational AI, I'd go and I'd take a screenshot of the opportunities website, and then I'd make it so that we had their coloring and branding, and it looked like their website with the conversational AI. I'd pop up and do the demo. There are times that there's a lot of value showing it on their site, using examples that speak to their vertical. So don't reinvent the wheel, but be doing something that clicks with your audience.
Okay. Perfect. And then just kind of in the chat, so you brought up some good points about business value and use cases and features. One kind of thread there is, how do you, for a sales team that is very feature heavy, where they sell on features quite a bit, how do you try to get them to incorporate more of the use case and business value in there?
It feels like it's one of those things where you kind of need to start doing it in front of them and let them kind of see it. Some account executives, the successful, really good ones, you can talk with them and say, hey, how about this? How about that? I have had a good percentage where, you're here to do the demos and they're not going to listen to you, that type of stuff. And that's one of those spots where you just kind of time the pause, and, they'll mention, oh, and yeah, we can invalidate that. We can cache the uncachable. And they'll pause and you'll say, hey, a great example is, and you'll just drop those points in, and they'll start to kind of see that it's effective. Again, it's it depends type of answer there.
Perfect. Well, Eric, appreciate you the time going over all of this with us. Some really valuable information here. I have a few extra slides before we end to share, and I'll get that taken care of here. So as a reminder, we want to remind everyone about our DEMOFEST game. So at the end of each session you attend, each session feedback survey you fill out gets you points to win some super awesome prizes that we have available. We're also very excited to be bringing DEMOFEST on the road again as DEMOFEST X. We had a great time in San Francisco earlier in March, and we can't wait to bring the event to Dublin, London, and New York City later this year. You can also register to join us at any of these events at demofest.com, which is also at the link in the docs tab on the right of the screen. And we also encourage you to stop by our expo hall to visit our premier partners of DEMOFEST. Remember, there is no transfer of money involved in this event, so all of our partners here have gone above and beyond to contribute to making this event a success for all of us. Thank you again for joining us for Business Value and Demo Vignettes, prepared for Detours, and thank you to Eric for that valuable insight and presentation. Up on the screen are the upcoming sessions. You'll automatically be pushed to the next session in your track, and you can switch tracks or sessions by toggling to the Agenda tab at the top left of your screen, and we'll see everybody soon. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.